This is David Cavuto, and I'm Product Manager for Cribl Search. Today I'm going to take you through a demonstration of how to create dashboard and dashboard inputs in Cribl Search. This demonstration requires Cribl Search 4.3.1 or later. So the first thing we're going to do is go into Cribl Search sample, which all Cribl Search instances contain, and do a quick little search to take a look at it. We should see that there are three types of data in Cribl Search sample: VPC flows, Amazon, coming from Amazon, Access Common data from Apache, and syslog data. We're going to restrict our demonstration to VPC flows for now, so we'll research through the VPC flows just to take a look at that, and then we'll see that they have a variety of different fields, and specifically this one called action. So what we're going to do is summarize by action using the timestats command. So we're going to do timestats, the count equals count by action. Now when I run this search, we'll see that we should get a nice time-based view with two different sets of data on them. The two different series, one for accept and one for reject. Now what we're going to do with that is we're going to take it and create a dashboard with it. So we're going to go over here to Actions, click on Actions, Add to Dashboard, and from there we're going to enter a panel title. We'll call that VPC Flows, and we're going to create a new dashboard. So by clicking on Create New, and the dashboard name we'll call Input Examples Dashboard, like that. Add and go to Dashboard. So now this shows us the dashboard. Now, on this dashboard, we want to be able to provide user interactivity. So we'll create inputs so that the user can control all the various panels on this screen. So if we go up here to the top right, click on the edit, that puts us into dashboard edit mode. And now we can add inputs. If we click on add, then input, the first thing we'll do is we will create a time picker. So we can give the time picker a name, and we'll call it time range, and then we'll give it an ID, time range 1. Notice that the input ID has to follow the rules for fields in search, that is, no dashes, no spaces, and no unusual characters. And we'll tell it we'd like it to be a time range, and we can leave the default value to 1 hour ago. And notice it appears up here in the upper left, and it is it's one of the various panels that are on the screen. Now we can close the edit box, we can hit the save button, and now we have a working time picker. The only thing that it does, however, is allows you to pick time, but it doesn't do anything with it. To make it operationalize, we now have to link it to the visualization that we created earlier. So we go into the edit mode of the VPC Flows visualization, click on the edit mode here, and we'll see that it has its own time picker. So what we'd like to do is use the link menu by clicking on link and then choosing the time range picker that we actually just created. So we can then click out of that, hit save, hit exit, and now you'll see we should be able to, and by the way, the input hid itself. You see you can both hide and show inputs like that using this little filter box up here, this filter icon. So now if we change this, we should be able to see that now the search will re-execute based on that specific input. So that's the first input that we created, is a time range input. The next thing we'll do is we'll create a numeric input to filter the fields by a minimum value. So for example, if we decide that we want to have a certain minimum value, we can do that. So we'll go back into edit mode, and then we'll again select add input, and we'll tell it to, we'll give it a name, and we can say a minimum threshold, and again we'll give it an input ID, and we'll call that min threshold, and we'll tell it is of type number, and in the default value we'll say 0. The minimum value will say 0 because it's going to be a filtering condition, and we'll leave no maximum value. And you can see again that the field, the input appears here on the panel automatically. We will close, we will hit save, and then we will hit exit to get back into edit mode, or to get out of edit mode. So once again, we see that, and then we have a field that we can modify, but this does nothing. So we have to link it back into the existing visualization. So go back into edit mode, click on the edit view, and if you remember, we called that field min threshold. So I can add a search modifier. So where the count is greater than $ min underscore threshold. And you notice we get it type ahead on that because it knows, search knows that that is a potential value. And the important thing here is that the $ links it back to the value that appears in that input there. So we get rid of the split by. So now we'll have a single value called the count. And now we should, we can hit save and execute. And now the search should return values. And now you see we have a variety of different values. Now if we change the threshold to be something like, let's say 1200, and re-execute, we should see now that we only see bars where the minimum threshold is met, 1200. Great. Next, we can add a IP address filter if we want, because we know that the data that's inside of this search contains IP addresses. So we can edit the dashboard again, add an input, and this time we'll just create a text input. Let's call it destination address filter, and we'll call it DSTADDR filter, like that, and it will be of type text, and we'll give it the default range of 0.0.0.0/0. So that will be its CIDR block, so that should match everything. We will again hit save, close, and then without exiting edit mode, we'll go back in here and add a filter, and that filter will be a very specific function called IPv4 is in range, like that. And then we will add the field we're comparing against, which is DSTADDR, and the filter we created, which is $dest_adder filter. And notice the type ahead there comes in. And so now that's going to additionally filter the data not only on the threshold that we created, but specifically anything inside of this destination address filter. So again, we'll go save, close, exit, and let's re-execute the search, and let's set this back to 0. And now the search should re-execute with both this minimum threshold and the destination address filter. And there you go. Now if we wanted to add a filter, for example, we know that there's 10.0 addresses in that destination address. So for example, we can do 10.0.0.0/24, and now it's going to do a CIDR filter on anything that matches the 10.0.0 net block. And you can see clearly there are fewer addresses now, and we can even combine these two. So for example, if we put 1100 in here, now it would be combining the threshold of 1100 events and then the destination address 10.0.0.0/24. And then finally, we can add a drop-down. Now if we go in here and edit once more, if you remember, the original data had an action field. So now we can go and create a filter that filters on action. So if we go and create an input, and it is of type drop-down, which we have here, let's give it a name, and we'll call it action. And we'll give it an input ID action picker, like that. It's a type drop-down. Now we're going to start out by simply giving it values, because we know it only has 2 possible values. If we look on this previous search, we see that the 2 values are reject and accept in all caps, and they have to match exactly. So accept, and then we'll add another value, reject, like that. And we don't need to add a default value, but we can turn on multi-select so we could see both at the same time. And we're going to save that, close that window. Then we're going to go over here, and now we will specify a filter inside of my search. We'll temporarily remove these other filters just to make it simple here, and say and action in And we're going to use the in comparison operator because that will allow us to specify multiple values. Action picker, like that. And notice that action picker is in parentheses because the in operator requires essentially an array that is specified in parentheses. And we'll add that final summarize time stats, the count equals count, open parent, close parent. Great. And that should be it. Let's hit save. And we're going to expect that there's going to be no results at the moment because the action picker is blank. So now if we go back and change that, we should see instantly it will research. And now we have accepts. If we also add to that rejects, it should work as well. And we should see accepts and rejects. Finally, now we can put all 4 inputs together. If we go back and add the 4 inputs, the other 2 inputs back into the search, I'm going to go here and paste back in the other elements that we had. So now we have the action, which is the action picker. We have the IPv4 in range function using the destination address filter input. That's this one here. We have the summary, and then we have the final post filter, checking which is applied to the threshold. And recall that the time picker is already linked to the time picker in this search. So I'm going to save and exit that. So now I should be able to do a variety of filtering on this event. So for example, I should be able to choose 3 hours ago, and it will re-execute that search, which it did. And I should be able to set a minimum threshold of, let's say, 6,000, like that. And it will re-execute the search just so anything above 6,000, which it does, great. I should be able to specify destination addresses. So if I go 10.0.0.0/24, it should show me anything in the 10 subnet. But of course, there are fewer than 6,000 events in that time range. So if we set that threshold back to 0, with any luck, we'll see some events there. And there are obviously there are substantially less than 6,000. And then we can just search by one or one of the actions if we wanted to see rejects. Great. Now there are 2 other things we can do. One is we can add a panel to help us understand how we should choose this destination address, because right now we're kind of just shooting blind. So it might be useful if we knew what the potentials for a destination address might be. So we can go back into edit mode, and now we're going to add a panel, and that panel is going to be a new search. So we can say something like top n values of the destination address. And so we can type in this search here. And again, this is summarizing by destination address action. And then we can also link this search on the same dashboard back to the original time picker. And notice this is just giving us a summary. We can tell it we'd like it to display the results as a table. So now we're seeing IP addresses there. And so again, we're going to hit save and exit. And so now we have a panel that's sort of an accessory panel that gives us some ideas as to what we should search for. So for example, here we see there's quite a few addresses in the 10 subnet, but there's one in the 52 subnet. So we should be able to search, let's say 52.216.176. So I'm sorry, 52.216.176 /24. And again, we could have entered the entire IP address, but we should with a /32. But we should be able to see that. Let's and those were all accepts, of course. So let's put this back on. Adding accepts, it will re-execute the search, and now we should see specifically the events that are in this particular subnet that are both rejects and accepts. Great. And the very last thing we can do is to change a function of this dropdown. So if you recall, when we created this dropdown we created by typing in 2 static values. That's convenient in this particular case because there were only 2 values. However, what if in fact you had many values and you didn't want to type them in, or even worse, you didn't know what the values were ahead of time. You can populate the drop values within the dropdown as a result of a search. So we can change this to a search type inline search and then put in the search itself. There you go. And we're going to hit save. Now you'll notice when we hit a search, we see a spinning cursor in the action field. And so that's actually going out and fetching the values. So now you actually see that we have that accept and reject populated there without us having to type it explicitly. So we'll just hit save, we'll hit exit, and now we'll have our completed dashboard. So here we can filter via time range. We have a minimum threshold, which is a number. We have a destination address filter, which we can populate, and we have actions that are populated solely from the values in the data. So we should be able to put this back to all addresses, minimum threshold of 0, and we should be able to populate that with an action, let's say accept in this case, and it should show us that any values that meet that criteria. And similarly, we should be able to change this time range, and you see that both visualizations on this page update because they're both linked. And now we will have the updated values for the past 1 hour and any specific results that apply to that data set. Great. So finally, you see the completed input examples dashboard with all 4 types of inputs, 2 different panels, and auto-populating drop-downs and the visualizations that apply. Great. Thank you so much. This has been David Cavuto, and I've been talking through Cribl Search, inputs, and dashboards. Thanks, and happy searching.